thing. So like, let's just stick to audio. And so it was when we looked into like YouTube and Twitch and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah. All right. I'll put this over here, and we are good to hook. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
oh god,
So
well at least you're setting the bar kind of low. So that's
yeah,
good.
right. Yeah. I have a little bit of an expectation. So yeah, who you are? If you have any social media you want to plug, go ahead. How
Yeah.
long you been collecting?
Well, my name's Wes Pasourw. You can find me online most places. pasourw. I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. I have a Twitch stream and I should use it more often. I just started playing video games a lot more than I was a couple months ago, but so I should start using my Twitch channel, but I never do.
Yeah, it's we all need to play more games.
Yeah. But I started collecting. I mean, I would say I started reading comics when I was a kid. I wouldn't necessarily say I was a collector then. I was pretty much only reading Superman, and this was back during the '90s. So I started kind of right after he came back from the dead, and so I missed that part. I remember like hearing about it in the news when I was growing up, but I wasn't reading at that time. And so I started getting into it then, and stayed with it up through like middle school and stuff. Then as I got older and got into high school, I just got busy with a lot of other stuff and just kind of fell away. But I always kind of kept up with it to kind of see what was going on in the world. Like I feel like I understood like what the stories were, especially with like Superman and Batman, because that was kind of the two things that I read the most. And then after I became an adult, and I was like, well, I make my own money. I can do what I want to now.
Right.
I started to get back into it, and then probably really started kind of, again, just starting to read it again, but then really getting into collecting and that kind of stuff. And I remember when I started, my wife was like, because I just started reading a couple titles, and this was around 2011, so it was when New 52 started for DC, and that's kind of what got me back in. And my wife was like, well, like, are you going to go like hardcore collecting, or like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'll probably just read a couple here and a couple there, and then now I'm up to the point where I'm picking up 10 to 15 books every week at the shop and stuff, and it's gotten a little out of hand, but but it's fun. So.
What's your local LCS? Your comic book shop there.
So I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
And so we have the big one is Heroes Aren't Hard to Find.
Okay.
They do a big con every year called Heroes Con.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a really good show.
I've heard of it. Never been, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, if you're into comics, it's a really good comic show. They don't do a lot of pop culture stuff. They don't really get into they have some like cosplay and that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, as all cons do, but it's very much focused on comics and the creators. And there are a lot of creators who used to work at Heroes at their shop, who are now starting to get big time and things like that. So that's kind of the big one here in Charlotte. And then I'm up in the north part of the city, and so the one that I go to every week, where like my pull list is a place called Parker, Banner, Kent, and Wayne. It's up in Cornelius, North Carolina, is the little town that it's in, and so they've got this cool logo where it's got Peter Parker, Bruce Banner, Clark Kent, and Bruce Wayne. It look like it's like a law firm.
Yeah.
And so it's a cool shop. They are mostly into gaming. They have these big gaming events pretty much 7 days a week. But they've got some really nice people up there. And they've got some good comics there too. So I normally pick up my stuff from there. But Heroes is great. I love those people, and I've been starting to hang out with them a little bit more too.
Interesting. So what do you collect more? Are you like a graphic novel kind of guy? I see you got a lot back there.
Yeah.
See some short boxes.
Yeah, I would say as far as things that I collect, I've definitely shifted a little bit more into collecting trades and things like that. I've got, so kind of how my collection split. So I've got this bookcase behind me, and then I've got another one the same size across the room that's completely full, and then I've got one that's about half that height right next to me that is completely full. I'm actually out of space right now. And so I actually counted earlier today. It's like 550 trades and graphic novels that I've got on the bookshelf there. And then I've got, short boxes here. I've got all of these, and then I've also got like 4 long boxes over on the other side of the room that are, again, I'm running out of space. So all in all, I'm up to like 4,500 combo between the trades and the floppies. And the floppies consist a lot of stuff that I've just bought and read over the last several years. I've started to get a little bit more into, especially probably the last year or so, starting to go back and pick up some older issues that I like, but I don't have a ton of like old issues.
Right.
I'm not one of those guys that's got like, well, I've got a Fantastic Four #1 sitting over here in this box or anything. Although I am super helpful, my uncle, who I've known since I was born, just told me like within the last month that he used to collect comics when he was little, and he still has all the comics at his mom's house. And I was like, well, when do you think this was? And he was like, oh, probably like the 60s.
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, well, what did you read? And he was like, both DC and Marvel. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, why have we never talked about this before? So we're supposed to go over there and kind of dig through his stuff. I was like, I'll bring my pricing guide. It's like, we'll just dig through and spend all day going through your comics and stuff.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
So fingers crossed that he's just sitting on stuff that he has no idea what he has.
Yeah, hopefully he's got something good. So, are you mostly DC and Marvel, or do you collect one or the other?
Mostly DC. If
Okay.
So when I look at like these two big bookcases in my room here, so the one behind me is all DC, and then I've got one across the room, and it's half full of DC. And then I've got about half a bookcase filled with Marvel. I'm trying to get more into some of the Marvel stuff. I've probably bought a lot more Marvel trades and things like that in the last year than I have DC. Just trying to get caught up on stories that I've missed and a lot of the history that you catch some during the movies. But I'm reading a lot more Marvel now too, and so sticking a lot to things like Avengers and Spider-Man, but also trying to go back and hit the big things that it's like, oh, everybody should read this.
Right.
So I've been going back and reading a lot of that kind of stuff and trying to get caught up. And Fantastic Four has become one of the things that I think I have missed out on the most.
Okay.
And kind of going back, I think it's going back and kind of reading a lot of stuff, and especially some of the old things, but also with their new stuff. I'm like, man, I missed out on some great stuff for Fantastic Four. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the family thing that I'm kind of drawn to, but I'm really digging a lot of the stuff that I find with them.
Good. Hopefully the Fantastic Four improves, since now they're going back to regular Marvel Studios. Maybe they can get tied into Marvel Cinematic Universe better.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody one day, and I was like, I don't understand how somebody has not made a good Fantastic Four movie yet, because I don't feel like it would be very hard to do, but you do like really need to stick with the source material.
Yeah.
But there's so much stuff that's there, and the family dynamic is so rich with a lot of different things you can do. It would make for a great movie, but I think it's going to take Marvel to come along and be like, listen, we're just going to open up a comic book and just make the movie off of this page instead of trying to come up with something too crazy and different. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful they get after that one.
Yeah. What do you got any cool autographs, or do you? I know you said you go to the con a lot. Is there?
Yeah, I've gotten a few. So I've started to get a lot of trades and things like that autographed. I got to meet Tom King a couple years ago, who's just killing it right now with
super cool guy.
All the stuff he's doing, and it was cool. He had just started Grayson at the time, and actually one of the reasons that I got on my son, his name is Grayson, and so it had just started. I was like, well, I've got to get him to sign this so I can put it up in my son's room and stuff. And I talked to him. He's a super cool guy.
Yeah,
just really nice, very down to earth. And then now he's like, he's the new guy over at DC, and he's just crushing it with a lot of stuff that he's doing right now.
He the first time I met Tom King, I mean, he wasn't with this group called Comic Book Sketch Art people.
Mm-hmm.
He's still DC, but he wasn't like affiliated with them convention wise. He had his own booth. He did whatever he wanted, and he would sign 100 books. If you had 100 books, he'd sign 100 books.
Yeah.
But now it's down to like, okay, he'll sign one for free, 2 for $5 kind of deal. But I remember the comicbooksketchart.com people would like hurry you up through the line, like, okay, he's got to keep going so we can make more money. But it's funny because he actually told them off, like, listen, I'm going to talk to these people. They buy my books. They sign my paycheck. I'm going to talk to these people. And I thought that was really funny.
That's awesome. Yeah, I follow a lot of those guys on Twitter and stuff, and I always love it when somebody's like, well, hey, I will sign as much as I can. If the line's huge, I'll ask you to be respectful of everybody. Yeah. But they're like, you guys are the ones that put food on my family's table. So, they're like, we want to support you, that kind of stuff. And that's one of the things there's probably a lot of people who will get mad if I say this, but that's one of the reasons I've never cared a whole lot for people like Neil Adams. I've listened to a lot of stuff like him talking podcasts and kind of seen how he is at shows and stuff like that.
It's
I'm
like
like,
$50 for one book.
yeah, it's crazy, and I totally get where he's coming from. I've listened to interviews, and he's very much about he's an advocate for the creator, which I think is great. I don't question necessarily his motives, but sometimes I'm like, it feels a little greedy for some of the stuff. And he did some great work back in the day. I'll give him that. But it's one of those things. If I've got some of the current big names sitting at a table across from him, and they're like, I'm free. I just come up. I'll just charge a handshake and a conversation, and I'll sign whatever you want.
Right.
And then you've got him who's like, just throw down some money and I'll sign some stuff. It's like, it's like I'm not really necessarily interested in, doing that. But everybody's a little different. I like the guys who put out, things for like the Comic Legal Defense Fund or the Hero Initiative.
Yeah.
And those things, and say, hey, throw a few shekels this way to be able to raise some money for something. Tim Sale, I've met him the last couple of years at Heroes Con, and he's been that way. He quote unquote charges for signatures, but the money all goes towards charity.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can get behind that. I can get down on
There's
that.
a couple comic book creators that come to some of the bigger conventions that I go to. They're representing an animal shelter or a charity that they like, and hey, you got $2 or $3? All right, I'll sign $2 or $3. So we actually have a first question here for you. Super
cool.
Shonda wants to know, what is your favorite version of Batman?
Favorite version of Batman. So I'm going to answer this maybe in a couple of different ways. So I don't know if it's necessarily for comics or for animated, but so I'll answer it a couple of ways. So one, I think probably my second favorite comic of all time is Dark Knight Returns. I think you just don't get any better Batman storytelling than that in terms of kind of a very concentrated one-shot take at, what's up the Dark Knight. And it can exist in a world that doesn't really have to affect what's going on in the mainstream, line of comics. I love when people get a chance to kind of do these one-off, DC used to call them Elseworlds, and now they've got things like Black Label, for people to be able to kind of come in and tell these stories that they think are, a cool take on a character that you couldn't do in a monthly book because it would change the status quo too much, or maybe, step on too many toes. So I love it in that regard. And plus, Frank Miller just at the time was, just incredible. So I think that's probably my favorite kind of one-shot take of Batman. I think one of my favorite versions of Batman across all of media is Batman the Animated Series.
Okay, yeah.
It's just so good. And I've been going back and watching a lot of episodes with my son. He's 5.5 now, and so he's just at that ripe age where he's just, willing to take it all in. And just those episodes hold up so well.
They do.
Just if you're a kid, you've got action. They're really quick. You're 21 minutes a piece, holds your attention. It's a lot of good fun. But then they're dealing with some like really deep themes that like for a kid you completely miss. And then you go back and watch it as an adult, and it's like, Jesus Christ, man. It's like, that's a lot. That's really heavy.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably my favorite take on Batman across all of media. You can't see it. Actually, this is a recent thing, and I don't spend a lot of money on like pop culture stuff or whatever. But I bought it's a production cell from Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. Oh, and so it's of the, I've got it kind of nailed to the wall, so I can't get it down. But it's a steal of the Phantasm that's in the graveyard scene, and it's really cool. It's one of those things when I saw it and I was like, okay, I need to find the money to grab this because this is a really cool thing. So I like that, and then kind of beyond that, Scott Snyder's run on Batman I think has been just incredible from beginning to end, to be able to write something for that long. And to be able to come up with it fresh. And there were a lot of things kind of going into it that I was like, I don't know if I want, my Batman to be that way. I don't know if I want to read another Batman origin story, or I don't know if I want to see Commissioner Gordon Batman. But he always finds a way to do something really cool with a character that I think is different enough without changing who the character is. And so I'm excited about his upcoming, him and Greg Capullo's upcoming kind of last shot at Batman with their Black Label book. And actually, what's today? Thursday. Saturday, I'm going down to South Carolina Comic-Con, and Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo and Jonathan Clapion are all three going to be there.
Oh, man.
So if you had asked me next week, my books and my favorite signatures on it, I'm sure I would have something from them to sign. So I'd probably take Batman #1 to get them to sign that for me.
Okay. Another question here. Do you remember the first comic you got, and do you still own it?
Yes, I remember my first comic. It was Superman number 93. It was one of the 0 year. Sorry, no, not 0 year. What do they call it? I'm looking for it over on my shelf. 0 hour. There we go.
0 hour, okay.
Yeah, one of the 0 hour tie-ins, and which honestly, it's a little confusing coming into it and reading that kind of as like your first comic because it's dealing a lot with like the status quo now, and then his parents are coming from Krypton, and it's like, wait a minute, I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and they were messing with stuff right then. So it was a little confusing, but over the years, I kind of caught up to it. But yes, I've got it. It's in super terrible shape, so much so that a couple years ago, I bought another version of it that was in a lot better condition, just so I could have one that was in good shape. But yes, that's was my first one, and I've still got it. Um, yeah, and then like I said, from there, I started reading Superman for a long time.
Fantastic. So who would you say is your absolute favorite DC or Marvel character of all time?
I'm a big Superman guy.
Superman.
I
Okay.
Yeah, I if you look on my shelves, I've got a lot more Batman stories.
Yeah.
And in comics, I think there are a lot better Batman stories out there than Superman. But just as a character and what they represent, and kind of what their beliefs are, I feel like Superman is, he's this guy that one just shouldn't exist. I mean, you talk about him being super powerful and people complain, that makes him boring and that kind of stuff. But he's this guy who, shouldn't exist. And the fact that he does means he could take over the world. He could do whatever he wants. He doesn't answer to anybody, but he's instilled with this belief system, from Mom, Pa Kent and growing up in Kansas, that he's just so down to earth and just knows that his job is to look out for people, and that he's got this huge responsibility that weighs on him. And it's all about, doing the right thing. I think that's why, Captain America, I like him over at Marvel, not as nowhere near as powerful as Superman, but just a lot of that
Same kind of
stuff.
core values. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just about, doing what's right. And stepping up, and sometimes that's not the easy thing to do, even if you are Superman. And that's why I like the stories that really dive into what is a challenge for him, instead of just having to punch Darkseid, which I love Darkseid. But the great Superman stories deal with the stuff with him as a coming to terms with who he is in the world, and trying to figure out how does he find his place in a world that he could do anything and people kind of expect him to do anything, but he can't.
Okay. Okay. So given that I mean, it seems like you're on top of comic book news. You go to your comic book shop. I would imagine a couple of times a month.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like me, sometimes I'm twice a week. So what do you think the newest rumor that Marvel is going to stop printing comics? I don't know if there's any truth to that, but
yeah.
let's say it's 100% confirmed they're going to do it. What do you think that's going to do to the industry?
Oh man, I think the industry takes a huge hit. I mean, that's right now the number one publisher that's out there right now. They're selling and putting out more books than DC is right now. And so I think if you take that off the shelves, I think DC and Image and Dark Horse and those guys, I think they pick up some of the stock, and they'll start to absorb some of that business. But I don't think it ever recuperates. And then I think it's at that point it's DC's game to figure out, do we try and keep this industry going, or do we need to now correct course and go do something else? I'm like you. I don't think that there's any way that they decide, oh, we're just going to stop publishing comic books. Right. I would think that, at the end of the day, even though, yeah, and I get into all this all the time with people on, well, I don't get into it because I just don't respond, but people on Reddit and things like that have all these links and ideas about how the industry is in decline and that how it's going to go bankrupt and all this other kind of stuff. And it's like, listen, at the end of the day, they still turn a profit, regardless of whether they turn a profit as much as they did last year, the year before, or whatever it is. It's still a profitable business for them. So, why would you not keep it going, even if it is just a little bit of money? And I think, especially for Marvel, that the MCU is helping out them immensely right now. And you've got tons of people who are coming into it and saying, hey, I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I didn't know anything about Captain Marvel. And so the last couple of months, I've been like, I need to pick up some Captain Marvel stuff so I can figure out a little bit about this character other than just going into the movies. And so things like that, even me who's an avid reader, I'm buying more Marvel stuff now because of those movies. And so I think that's something they have to use to their favor at this point.
Right. Okay. How do you feel? I mean, this is. I think everyone kind of has the same opinion. I don't know if you keep up with what Marvel's putting out every month. It seems like every other month
Hmm.
there's a new number one, a new Spider-Man number one, new
Yeah.
X-Men, whatever, Avengers, what have you. Do you think that's helping or hurting the industry as a whole?
I think it probably hurts it a little bit. I know for me personally, I don't like having that many number ones. You know, it used to be a number one was a super special thing.
Right.
It didn't mean you only got it once, but it happened so seldomly that it was not something that you would expect to have happen every year or two. Um, and the thing with like a lot of Marvel stuff is I don't think they necessarily needed to have new number ones. The story didn't necessarily change that much. It wasn't necessarily like a company line reboot or anything. Like it wasn't a DC Rebirth situation. But at the same time, it they kind of kept trying to keep it fresh and say, hey, here's a starting point. Here's a starting point. And I used to think that as well. Like, oh, what if they went back to a number one every time they restarted, a character, not necessarily restarted a character, but every time there was a new jumping on point. So you switched creators, or you finished up a storyline and then went back to number one. And I used to think about that, but now looking at what people put on social media, there's a lot of people out there who are saying, hey, this is my first time going to pick up a comic. I just went and saw this Infinity War movie, and now I want to read about the Avengers, and I have no idea where to start because there's 8,000 different number ones out there. There's Avengers, there's Secret Avengers, there's New Avengers, there's Uncanny Super Secret Hero Avenger animals, and all that kind of stuff. And so it is confusing for somebody who is not kind of ingrained in the industry like a lot of us are. If
Right.
you're an outsider looking to come in, you really have no idea where to jump in right now. And so you're dependent upon your local shop owners and the community to help kind of find you and kind of guide you through this process of getting into it, because it's not an easy thing to do.
Absolutely. Another question here in the Twitch chat. Do you feel the Captain Marvel? How do I say it? You talked about Captain Marvel movie. Do you feel
Mhm.
that Marvel is behind in their fan base movies with a female character? I say this because DC had Wonder Woman, and it was a huge success.
Yeah, I don't think they're necessarily behind. I mean, if you want to put it in terms of like very black and white, like yes, they are behind because they were second. Then sure, but in terms of what they're going to get out of it, I think it makes sense that DC had the first one. I think Wonder Woman's arguably the most popular female superhero character out there right now. And it has been. I mean, she had a huge TV show, so I mean, a lot of people's parents and things like that remember her from back then. And so there were a lot of people who I think were kind of pre-sold a ticket to Wonder Woman, who were like either A, I love superheroes because I'll go see whatever, or B, I watched that TV show growing up or as an adult or whatever, and so I want to go see what this is. And so I think that's plus the fact that it was a really good movie and word of mouth served it very very well. But so I think it makes sense that Wonder Woman was first.
Yeah.
I think with Marvel, Captain Marvel definitely seems like, especially for the MCU, the direction they're going in terms of who's going to kind of help lead the new class of heroes that we're going to see. We're all kind of assuming at this point that we're not going to see a lot of the same characters after Avengers Endgame. We may not have Cap, we may not have Iron Man, we may not have Thor, who knows? And so they need somebody to kind of step up and lead. And so they need kind of a person to step in and fill that shoes. And it makes sense to be Captain Marvel. I know she's obviously gained popularity a lot in the last couple of years, and they've rebooted her a couple of times and kind of gotten her in there. Um, but I think in that regards, they're not necessarily behind. I do think that it's we're hearing a lot about a Black Widow movie at this point, and I think it'll be interesting if they do end up into a situation where they've got a character who's been a part of the movies for the last 10 years and hasn't had their own movie, and then all of a sudden gets one.
Right.
And it's like okay, and I get it. Like you've got to have the right story. You don't want to force it and things like that. And that's one of the good things Marvel seems to have been doing really well was that they're finding the right story for these movies. But you've had this character who could have had her own film for a little while and maybe didn't. So maybe that's the part where maybe they missed the boat a little bit. They could have done a little bit more with Black Widow instead.
Okay. Okay. Good. What do you think about the DC universe? What can they do to pull that dumpster fire together?
So I meant to tell some of my friends. I think they're at work right now, so they couldn't get on. But I saw from your list here this question was going to come up. So we get into it a lot. There's four of us that are really kind of close connected. We go see a lot of these movies together. I am the biggest fan of the DC movies out of the four of us. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and preface that. I Dumpster fire is not necessarily the word that I would use for a
That's
lot
what
of it.
the internet uses.
Yeah.
I love everything about the DCEU, but
Okay.
I'm in the
Okay. Cool.
minority for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm with you. And actually, I went back and I rewatched Suicide Squad and Batman v Superman recently, and I watched the Ultimate Edition, and I've seen it before, and it's just been a little while since I've watched it. One, I do think the Ultimate Edition definitely improves upon BVS kind of as a whole. Like it adds more to the story, and there's a lot more substance there. I think there's corrections they could do to all these movies to have made them better. Do I think they're terrible movies and shouldn't be watched? No. Um, I was going to make a comment, but I don't want to start an internet thing. So no, I don't think they're terrible. I think there is value there. And I think what DC's doing now makes a lot of sense and is ultimately going to end up working for them in kind of focusing some of these one-off heroes first. As much as I wanted a Justice League movie, I do think that Justice League was plagued by two things. One was Zack Snyder leaving and Joss Whedon have to come in. I think we definitely got a chopped up
Yeah.
movie there, and that was bad circumstances, with Zack Snyder and his family. And I think, Warner Brothers just had a decision to make. It's like, do we can the whole thing and just figure it out later and just eat this money, or do we try and salvage it? I think they went with option two, and it could have been better. I don't think it was as bad as what some people thought, but
No.
it definitely could have been better and should have been better. But as badly as I wanted that Justice League movie to happen, I think that they would have probably been a little bit better served to follow the Marvel formula, in that they could have introduced a couple of characters at a time before having them all come together. I did like the idea of having like Superman and Batman come together and then kind of meet outside of the Justice League, because there's a kind of a relationship there, and maybe even with Diana, bringing her in and finding ways to kind of build on that instead of it's just four individual people coming together, but or however many they're going to do. So I think now they're making some good decisions. I think Wonder Woman and Aquaman have definitely shown that the individual superhero thing is kind of the way to go for now.
They can exist together and be separate and be profitable.
Yes, absolutely. And you can have these movies and be connected and be part of the same universe without having to, trip over somebody else every time you walk out the door. I think Shazam will be one of the biggest kind of telltale signs about how this is going to work, because now we've got a brand new character that we haven't met in any of the other movies yet. Definitely living in that universe as we've seen from the trailers, but the question is going to become, how does that play on screen, and then how does it work with him not really kind of fitting into everything else that's existed so far, like we've gotten with the other characters.
Absolutely.
And so it looks awesome. It looks funny. So I'm interested to see how that ends up turning out. And so I was talking to somebody the other day. It's funny, we're getting two Captain Marvel movies with inside of a month of each other from both companies.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's talk about graded books for a second. Do you
Yeah,
have any at all?
I don't currently. I've had a
Okay.
couple before, but I don't currently have any.
So which grading companies are you familiar with?
CGC and was it CGBS?
CBCS, yeah.
CBCS, yeah. There we go.
Okay. Which so I guess I can't ask you that one since you don't have any. That's okay, no problem. Did you know of that? There's a third one, PGX, and have you heard their controversy that they've had?
I've not heard of. You said PGX?
PGX, yeah.
PGX. I've not heard of them. So enlighten me. You tell me what I need to know.
Again, this is kind of it's mostly rumor. There was a gentleman who submitted a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, and didn't get it back.
Oh man.
That's the alleged rumor. He made a YouTube video of it, and then that specific person removed that YouTube video, and that was kind of the end of the controversy. We didn't know if it was true or the company admitted fault, and part of the settlement was they had to remove the video. We don't know. There is I don't know if you subscribe to the YouTube channel We Love Comics.
I've heard of it. I've not subscribed to it before.
There's a gentleman who same thing, just talks about comic books. Where he reached out to all three grading companies and says, "Hey, I want to do this channel. Can I put an ad for your company in front of my YouTube channel? And in return, can I submit 1 or 2 books a month to get graded, and the only one that replied was PGX, and they said sure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the whole rumor started. Well, he didn't have anything to do with the rumor, but
Right.
now that the rumor's kind of settled, PGX kind of, it's tough to explain. I have to read up on it a little bit more. But PGX is, I guess, getting better. They're starting to do some signature verifications, which is something that
Cool.
CGC does not do, which CBCS does. So if you went to a convention, back in the day before they had CGC and witnessed signatures, you could submit that book to that company and they would authenticate that signature for you, which is kind of cool because on my wall here behind me, this is all unwitnessed autographs.
Yeah.
Plus more. So I've got a number of books I need to submit.
Yeah, all of my stuff, well, except for a couple. So I've ordered a few comics from like Midtown up in New York, and they'll sometimes have great signed copies that you can order for cheap. And I don't normally do that because I like the feeling of going actually meeting the person, having a story behind it. But every once in a while I'll grab one. But that'd be great. Actually, so you were talking about signatures earlier, and I forgot to even mention this, which shame on me. So this is my kind of my favorite signature that I have.
Oh, wow.
Stan the Man.
Stan Lee, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. He was, so this is Captain America 112. This is the last Kirby drawn Captain America issue. And Stan was going to be at Heroes Con. It was his last appearance. It's been probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And so I was like, well, I didn't have anything like in comic form written by Stan. There's probably a lot of people who don't have anything written by Stan unless it's something more recent. It's like, well, I've got to find something. I don't have a ton of money to go out and drop to get something, and so I ended up finding this up at Parker Banner, Kit and Wayne, the shop I was talking about. And it's not in terrible shape. It's definitely a little rough, but it's a little old. But yeah, that's something I've thought about before. It's like, man, I'd love to get this thing slabbed and graded, but especially with CGC, they have to see you do it, and it's just it's a hassle to go through all that. And at the same time, there's a lot of people out there who get that stuff because they want to turn around and sell it, and it's like I don't want to do that. I just like having it protected.
Exactly. That's what I'm about too. So if you submit it for signature verification, it's gonna look like this. So it's got the red label. Unfortunately, red is kind of ugly in my opinion, but that's kind of what you're gonna get. It's the red label, and I'll actually say on here, I don't know if you can see it very well, signed by whoever.
Is that Tom King?
I got Tom King, I got David Finch, and I got Neil Adams, who did the cover art.
Oh, nice!
Because this is the DCBS variant as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
And CBCS charges, I think it's like $15 for a signature, and then a few dollars for every additional one.
Yeah, well, that's not bad.
No, it's very reasonable, and they authenticate. Where if you submit to the CBS, it'll say on cover someone wrote a name or something. But
what? I think they're going to be at the con I'm going to on Saturday, and so I think I'm actually going to take a book with me to go submit and see if I can do that with. I might do it with this one. I've got to decide, but
it's worth it. I'm in the same boat as you. I don't want to sell my stuff. I just want to protect it, especially with a book that old and the signature on it. You definitely want to be as safe as possible. So it's definitely worth the encapsulation, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So here's another Twitch question. Of all the DC characters, what movie would you hope that they make? I love Teen Titans. I hope they make a live-action Teen Titans movie.
Oh man, Teen Titans. So one, have you watched Titans at all? On DC
I have.
Universe?
I have the DC Universe streaming app, and I was
okay. Cool.
I was every week. I was right here watching it.
You're watching Doom Patrol?
I am watching Doom Patrol.
Holy shit, Doom Patrol, man! Like that. I told somebody the other day that show should not be as good as it is.
It's weird. They got. Who would have thought that Brandon Fraser would have made a really good Robot Man?
I know, right? Like, it's so good. I told somebody the other day, and Titans was the same way. Like, I know it started off, people weren't quite sure what to think, because obviously it's very different than the Perez and Wolfman Titans that most people, know and love, but it still turned out really well. So, sorry, that's just a side note. You said Titans, and I was like, oh man, I
love
talk about
Titans. Yeah. Any movie at all, any character.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think what would be a good one. I'm trying to think of like the beyond the obvious stuff.
I'd say the Spectre. If I had to make one, I'd
Yeah,
say Spectre or a Justice League Dark movie.
actually, Justice League Dark was one I was going to mention. I love what James Tynan's been doing with Justice League Dark
Yep.
lately. Since that kind of launched back again, that's been a great run. I've been going back and reading some like Swamp Thing and things like that, trying to brush up on a little bit more. I'm excited about that show coming out.
That's going to be another great show. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that could make a good movie. I mean, I know he had a movie at one point, but we don't talk about that. What was I thinking about the other day? I think Nightwing, deserves a movie.
Nightwing, yeah.
He's probably one of my favorite DC characters, and I know it's you kind of want to have an established Bat universe to kind of fit him into.
Yes.
I think, but I think they could definitely do that. And I guess there's still rumored that Chris McKay is still working on that movie supposedly, but who knows when that'll come out.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about. I was gonna say the New Gods, and then I remembered. Oh, Ava DuVernay is making a New Gods movie.
Yeah. There's a Black Hawk movie coming out soon. Spielberg behind that one.
Yeah, they're doing so many different things right now that it's like before I would be like, oh, that should be a movie, and they're like, okay, we'll make it. And so I think there's a lot of cool stuff out there. God, there's something else I feel like I'm just missing that's like right in front of me, and I'm looking around the room because I'm like, something's gonna spark a thought, and I'll be like, oh, that.
They need to do a Legion of Doom movie, in my opinion, because they already have. They got a Lex Luthor. They have a Manta. They've established the Deathstroke.
Yeah.
So they've got the core members. I don't know what they do about the Joker, but it's all It's all there.
That was one of the things I really loved about Justice League was the ending, with kind of the tee up for Legion of Doom in Justice League, whatever they're gonna go with. And I think what Scott Snyder's doing right now in Justice League and having the Legion of Doom kind of exist and working side by side. I mean, it's like a modern version of the TV show, which is really cool. And so I absolutely think that could work. We're already seeing some movies come out. Suicide Squad, and then we're going to have a Birds of Prey movie with Harley Quinn in it. So we're seeing some more villain centric type stuff come out that I think the marketplace is probably primed and ready for it. Booster Gold could make a really fun movie.
Booster Gold, yeah, that would be a good one.
I just thought about Booster Gold. I'm trying to think of some other like really obscure people.
Oh, let's see.
Be good.
Who do I got on the wall that doesn't have a movie?
Yeah, just start looking around the room and stuff. I mean, there's so many like Legion of Superheroes. I think could be good.
That would be a nice one.
I know they're making another Green Lantern Corps movie. So I mean, I think that'll hopefully if they give that the time and attention it deserves, it'll be good.
With a possible Tom Cruise as a Hal Jordan.
Tom Cruise, Hal Jordan. I mean, I guess that'd be fine. I love the Mission Impossible movies. I think that the last few have just gotten better and better and better, and so but I think that's because Tom Cruise has this like kind of niche that he fills into, where it's like we need 18 minutes for this movie of Tom Cruise running, and he can do it. So let's go film that. but I don't know if that translates into a Green Lantern movie.
No.
I always thought that somebody like Bradley Cooper would make a good Hal Jordan.
I could see that. That's true.
Yeah. Ryan Reynolds, I think, had the possibility to be a good Hal Jordan. I think, he worked with what he had in front of him at the time. I think he'd make a really good Wally West. But yeah, whenever he's cast, like, oh, okay, I was like, I would have cast him as Wally, but, I think Hal works too. But yeah, so I think Bradley Cooper would be my money.
That's an interesting cast. I did not ever think of Bradley Cooper as a Hal Jordan. Obviously, everyone wants Idris Elba to play a young Jon Stewart.
Yeah, I think there's some good options out there. Oh, there was rumor. I think just popped up yesterday about Idris Elba replacing Will Smith as Deadshot in the new Suicide Squad movie.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because I did hear about that. That he unfortunately isn't coming back for this movie, but they didn't say whether or not he was done with the character. I mean, he might still pop up somewhere, or who knows?
Yeah,
they need someone to
like lead. That's the tagline for all the DC movies right now.
Yeah, maybe someday.
The Suicide Squad. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? So we're not done with it yet. Do you have a book that has a lot of sentimental value? Maybe not worth a whole lot on the Overstreet price guide, but you know what? You're saving it
Yes.
from a fire.
So if I have to save a book, it is this one here. It's
Interesting.
Batman #2 from Rebirth, and it is super sad and super sentimental. Why I say that book? But I bought this book on the day that my dad died.
Oh no.
Not knowing that it was going to happen that day, but it was one of those things I probably didn't realize until about a month later. Um, After it happened, I was going through some stuff, and I was like, oh, when did I pick this up? It's because I got it because it was just one of the variant covers that I didn't have because I've got the regular cover behind me, but I picked it up and like I said about a month later I was like, oh, when did I get this? And I started thinking about it. I was like, holy crap! I was like, I think I got it that day. And I went back and checked, and I was like, oh yeah, sure enough, I bought it that morning, and my dad died that afternoon, and so it's just one of those things that like. I kind of keep things in a certain place. Like I remember just the most random stuff from big life events. Like I was wearing a Flash shirt that day, and so like I don't wear that shirt anymore because it's got bad memories now.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a book that just holds a lot of like I said, sentimental value for me. So if something's going up in flames, if my wife and son are out of the house and they're safe, I'm probably coming
Going
back
back in
to
for the book.
this. Yeah,
Well, that's a cool book, but unfortunately, you know, uh, I wish it was a better memory for you.
yeah. Um, I will say I do have some other books that have good memories. So something that I found at a con that I thought was really cool, or
Yeah.
things that I saved up to get and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I've got a lot of books that are like that. So
Before Tom King charged a bunch of money to sign books, I did get him to sign that exact book and exact cover. Uh,
oh
just
nice.
because I knew he was going to be there, and someone told me that he signs, anything as long as you make like a donation. So I was like, I'm just going to bring every Rebirth Batman out right now, and just get him to sign them all, and so that's how I got that one signed.
Yeah, I'm hoping he shows back up soon for one of the cons that are around here. Like I said, Heroes Con, as big as it is, normally attracts some good names. I think like Tom King and James Tynion were there at the same year. I think that was the last time they were there, but they've had some big ones the last couple of years. So I'm
Yeah,
hoping he comes back.
for sure. Tom King actually doesn't live too far from me, so he actually ends up at a lot of the smaller conventions, which is nice.
Yeah.
One of the bigger ones that I attend every year is Baltimore Comic Con,
Oh yeah.
and he's just down the road from that convention center, almost literally. So he's there every year on the spot. So I don't know what it's like not to have Tom King at my convention.
Oh well, that's cool. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Well, I might have to drive up there and check out some of those cons because I'm down in North Carolina, so it's not that far of a drive. So I can definitely
Baltimore
make
is
that work.
worth it. There is a super secret convention in DC every
Mm-hmm.
year. It's called DC in DC.
DC and DC.
Yep,
Yeah.
and it's not very advertised at all. You come. I discovered it when I was chatting with some gentlemen in line at a convention, and they said that's where they were
Yeah.
going next. Was DC in DC? I had to look it up. Never heard of it, and
Huh.
it's all DC in Washington DC.
Well, that sounds like it's right up my alley.
Exactly. So I was
Yeah.
all excited about it. So we have another Twitch question here for you. This one
Yeah.
says, "My daughter loves comics. She reads them to her baby brother. What
Oh,
are some
cool.
comics you would have her read?" I think she's about 10.
She's about 10. Um, so I know there's a lot of really good stuff coming out for kids right now, and DC's getting ready to come out with even more. They've been plugging this new Mara graphic novel they're coming out with. That's definitely for younger readers, and so they've got I think it's like DC Zoom and I think maybe DC Ink are like kind of the two imprints they have coming up for kids. And so I would say definitely keep your eyes peeled for that kind of stuff. I forget which one's aimed at which age group, but
Right.
so I know that they're going really hardcore after kids right now. Um, because if you can get the kids into something, the parents will follow right behind. And
Absolutely.
yeah, but there's a lot of really great stuff. I mean, there's some kind of animated DC stuff that's out there right now. I know kind of along the lines of like Justice League Action and things like that. I'm trying to think of some of the ones that I know my son has gotten. So and actually Marvel too. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of comic adaptations of all the Marvel cartoons, Spider-Man and Avengers and all that kind of stuff. that workout. If it's mainly for her to go kind of go through the exercise of reading, and she just likes to read, and she just happens to read to her baby brother, then I think all of those are really good. My son is really weird. Like he likes the superheroes and that kind of stuff. He loves watching the movies and everything, but we'll go and I'll take him to the comic shop and I'm like, oh yeah, you can pick out one or two books or something like that, and he picks out things like Scooby Doo and like Uncle Scrooge, and so he's got a couple of like Uncle Scrooge comic books, and I'm like, dude, you have never watched anything like that before. And he's like, no, I really want it. I'm like, okay, if you want it, I'll get it for you. I mean, it's fine, but it's so weird, some of the stuff that he gravitates towards that's not what he's watching at home, but just that's the comic that he wants to read.
Right. Right. Interesting. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of good, kid-friendly comics these days, which is good. Teach them young. The more that they are into books now, the more it's gonna keep the industry
Yeah.
alive in the future.
And I think there's some super obvious stuff out there, like I mean, like, there's like My Little Pony comics and Powerpuff Girl comics and all that kind of stuff that's definitely like straight up aimed at kids, and but it's very much, it feels like the cartoons. It's kind of just directly interpreting some of the episodes and things like that. And so I like what DC's getting ready to do with some of these imprints they have coming up, where they're basically writing comics that are only exist in comics forms, aren't adaptations of cartoons or anything, and made specifically for those audiences, with them in mind. And so I think they come up with some really cool stuff, and it creates to your point, kind of that bridge as they get older. It gives them something to read to get ready for reading the main line of books. Because there's not a ton of like super adult stuff in like a random issue of Batman and things like that, but there also are a lot of really heavy themes that a kid's not going to be able to get.
Right.
I would not recommend somebody go out and read Mr. Miracle if they're a kid right now. They probably don't, have to really worry about sifting through the specifics of dealing with depression and anxiety and things like
Right.
that. So I think it's cool that DC and like I said, I think Marvel, I'm sure, has some stuff coming out too that I'm just not familiar with, but coming out with stuff that's aimed directly at kids, so they have something that's very accessible for them.
Perfect. Perfect. So you're saying you don't want your kids reading the DC Black Label?
No, I'll look at Batman's penis if I have to, but I don't want
Yeah.
my son having to look at it. So
I pre-ordered that book, not really knowing what to expect. I just knew it was going to be cool, and I think I paid $6 for that book, and got it signed by Brian Anzarello. And
nice.
when I got out of line, some guys gave me like 300. Tried to give me like $300 for that book.
I've got I kind of did the same thing. I got the main cover and then the Jim Lee variant cover. I told my shop, I was like, oh yeah, go ahead and put me down for both of those. And so I got them, and then like as it was leading up to it, it gets, that's one of the things that frustrates me about comics nowadays is that I try so hard to stay away from spoilers each week
Right.
before something comes out, because I'm typically at the shop on Wednesdays, so I get my books on the day they come out, so I can avoid spoilers. But stuff leaks and get spoiled ahead of time. So like the Batawang or whatever you want to call it, got spoiled, leading up to it. And so it was already starting to be a big deal. So I picked my books that week. I was like, oh, this is starting to get a lot of traction.
And then they sell out at your shop? I mean, they flat out could not get any more, period. When they were out, they were out.
Oh, yeah, out.
Yeah,
out same day. And they ordered a decent amount because it's a Batman book. It's a new format. So, I mean, there were a lot of things riding on it, but, they sold out same day. And this is not the most popular shop in town that I go to. But people found it, and they came in and they snatched it up. In fact, day of, they were limiting people to 1 copy per person because they did know that was going to be a thing, and they didn't want somebody to come along and be like, I'll take 10 copies.
Yeah. Same thing with us. That was it. One and done. You couldn't get anything else.
I was at Midtown Comics this weekend. I was up in New York for the weekend and went by the main location, and they had they were selling just the normal version for $60 a piece, not signed or anything. And that seems to be kind of the going price that I've seen in a couple places. But they had a slabbed version that was signed, and I think it was going for like $3,000. So yeah, it's
glad I kept mine.
yeah, if you've got yours and you ever decide you need a little bit of money, now granted it could always go down, but if tomorrow all of a sudden you need a couple $1,000, you could probably make it really quickly.
Yeah, that's true. Hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Yeah,
Um, how do you and I see behind you you got short boxes and it looks like some shelves. Is that your
yeah.
main filing system? Is that your kind of how you keep your comics secure and safe at night?
Yeah, yeah. This is pretty much most of the comics. Most of the floppies that I have are in those boxes. They're all short boxes. I've got 4 long boxes on the other side of my desk here, just because it's overflow, and I've started to go through and try and purge some stuff and pare down, just because I this room only gets so big. And so, yeah, that's where most of my floppies live. The only thing that doesn't go in there is obviously things that won't fit.
Right.
So like the Batman Dams and um, a couple of other books that I have, and then also anything that's a blank variant. I keep those separate from everything else, just because I like to have easy access to them in case I'm going to a con and I want somebody to do a sketch or sign or something like
Okay.
that. And then like any signed issues, I keep those out, and then anything that's like a super key issue. I don't have a ton of those, but if I've got something that I feel like is pretty rare or something like that, then I'll try and keep it aside just in case.
What are some of your cooler keys that you have?
I've got it stashed away and I can't get to it right now, but I picked up a Fantastic Four #1 reprint
Okay.
the other day. It's in bad shape, but it came out. I think it's 1967. It came out, so it's just a couple years after it came out. It's the first reprint of it. I think it came with a record at the time. This one does not have the record, but if it was in good shape, even without the record, I think it goes for a couple $1,000s.
You mean like a vinyl record? Is that what you say record?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, yeah. It's like I said, this one's in super rough shape. I think I paid like $50 for it. But it's so cool because it looks pretty much like the exactly like the original. Like you could tell somebody who doesn't know, like, oh, this is original copy, and they'd be like, oh, okay. But that's one of those things I picked up that I thought was really cool. And I liked. Oh, there's something else. Oh, okay. This is one that I really like, and I got this not too long ago. It's like the first hardcover for Dark Knight, and it was a limited edition, and so there's only 4,000 copies of it, and inside of each one is Frank Miller's signature, and
Oh,
so it
wow.
tells you how many there were. Like this is number 2,339, and he signed all of it, but graffiti. What's it called? I'm trying to remember now. I'm flipping as I open the book. Graffiti designs. They do a lot of like big art books and things like that. But they printed it, and so like this came out not too long after that story came out. So that's probably some of the stuff that I have that I like. I've got the Captain America one, and then a lot of my stuff is a lot more like the modern stuff. I've just recently started to kind of go back and start to look for some key like Bronze Age books and things like that. So I've started to shop around for things like those. Like I've got a Mr. Miracle #1 that I recently got that I'm was happy to get that from kind of the first series, and so I'm just now at a point where I feel comfortable kind of going out and dropping $50 on one comic book, or $100 or $200 or something like that. If it's something really special. This is something else I got recently. Death of Captain Marvel, the graphic novel, kind of the first in that line.
That's very cool.
I saw that as one of those things. I'm not the biggest Captain Marvel fan, but I was like, you know what? That might be something worth picking up now, especially with the movie getting ready to come out. And granted, it's not the same character, but one thing leads to another kind of thing.
It's funny you mentioned a comic book came with a vinyl record. I'll show you this. I don't know if you ever seen this, but the Dark Knight's Metal actually came with one.
I've heard about that. I have not seen that. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, and Greg Capullo was actually at the Baltimore Comic-Con, and I missed it by a day. It didn't arrive in time, so I missed it by one day. I haven't listened to it. I don't know any of these bands. We got like Red Earth and Warcry, stuff like that. But I just love it for the cool Batman riding a Joker dragon picture it is.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so I'm adding that to my list of things I've got to go out and find. That's
it's limited to 4,000.
Okay, so I'll have to look for that. Man, so have you met Greg Capullo before?
I have.
He's such a cool guy.
He's very cool.
He was at South Carolina Comic Con a couple of years ago. It was just him, and something happened, and he was running late. He got there like an hour and a half late, but before he would start signing books, when he got there, he came through the line. He shook hands with everybody, took pictures with everybody, and just wanted to meet everybody that was standing in line waiting for him. Then before he started signing books, and he's such a cool guy. And then when you get to his table, you get to talk to him a little bit there too. But I love following him on Twitter because he just you don't mess with that guy. Like
No.
if you're trying to troll him, like you better get ready for him to come at you.
Yeah.
And he's going to shut you down. And I love it. He loves his wife so much. He's this big guitar playing weightlifting guy, and then he's talk about how much he loves his wife and stuff, which is always
Big teddy bear.
cool. Yeah, he's a huge teddy bear, which is really cool. So I'm excited to see him again this weekend. And Scott Snyder, I've never met before, so I'm pumped about meeting him this
Scott
weekend.
Snyder's a cool dude too. Another gentleman that I think is underrated. A lot of Comic Cons that's still kind of popular. Dan Jurgens.
I want to meet Dan Jurgens
He
so
is
bad.
cool. He's a very cool guy. His son, when I was chatting with him, just graduated Green Beret training with the
Oh, that's cool.
U.S. Army. So his son is in the Special Forces.
That's cool. One of my favorite Superman artists is, and he's written some of my favorite stuff too. But his art, when you think back to some of the iconic Death of Superman stuff, I think I just love the stuff that he does, and so he's one of my favorites. So I think that he's a guy I want to meet. Jeff Lemire, been reading a lot of his stuff.
Yep, yep.
I've not met him before, but he's on my list of people that I want to meet.
Yeah, definitely. If you get the chance, Baltimore Comic Con is what's great about it is you get a lot of the bigger convention exclusives, like San Diego or New York Comic Con, the ones that are like you need $10,000 just to get through the front door kind of convention. You get those exclusive comics, and it's very cheap. It's very affordable. It has a kid zone. It's a whole weekend, and it's actually right next door to the National Aquarium. So there's plenty of, if you're done with the convention, you got kids, just go right next door, play with the dolphins.
That'd be great. Yeah, I'd love to go to some of those cons because I don't have much of a desire to go to like San Diego just because it's turned into such a a pop culture kind of thing.
It is.
Like I know that obviously the big names like Marvel and DC have to be there because it's a Comic Con,
right?
But it's such an overcrowded and that kind of stuff. And I've talked to a lot of people who have been, and they're like I go just because it's more of a tradition now than anything. But they're like I have a better time at places like Baltimore or C2E2 and what's another one that somebody was telling me about? WonderCon.
WonderCon, I've heard good things about.
Yeah, some of the ones that are still very much about comics and not so much about movies and TV shows and things like that. I mean, because there's San Diego and even New York now. New York's a little bit better, but San Diego is just so much like this TV show is going to come out. And it's like, well, are they related to comics at all? And it's like,
no,
but they're coming. And it's like, okay, sure.
Yeah, and I get that feeling with Baltimore as well. You can still have those A-list celebrities that go there. I think every Avenger's been there at least once, but they limit it to 3 or 4 like big celebrities, and then the rest are, it's all comics. And they have some independent stuff there as well, which is kind of nice. Everybody's there.
Well, that's cool. Well, I'm gonna add that to my list of places to check out. Then
it's definitely worth it. Because, like you said, you got kids, and I'm sure they would be tickled pink to go to the aquarium. Probably more than the convention, but the aquarium,
probably so.
Aquarium's still pretty cool, for sure. But other than that, that's all I got on my end. Do you want to throw your social media out one more time?
Yeah, if you're looking to follow me on social media, it's at pasourw, PASOURW. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So I don't tweet a whole lot. I follow a lot of people, and it's where I get a lot of news and things like that. I like to just kind of scroll through and grab headlines, and if I see something, I'm like, oh, let me click on that and read it. And so I use it a lot more for consumption, but I definitely have a desire to be on there a little bit more. I was probably a little bit more active back when a buddy of mine were doing a podcast, but but if I'm on there, hit me up. I'm trying to get more active on Reddit too. I just started getting back on there in the last couple of years, or probably the last year or so. And so I'm trying to comment a lot more and be a part of that community, but sometimes it just takes a negative turn, and I'm a pretty positive person. And so sometimes I'm just like, like you're too much for me. I can't talk to you.
Right. Oh my gosh, the internet these days. But well, good to speak with you. We'll have to have you back on again. I think we're going to try to do at least one a week. So I'll throw this up on YouTube if you want to throw it on your Facebook page or give it to your friends. And then, or if you have any of your friends that kind of want to be on, definitely give them my contact information. We'll get them on.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me on, Tony. I really
Hey, no
appreciate it.
problem, no problem. I appreciate you, man. Hey, thanks so much.
Absolutely, man. Have a good one.
Yep, see ya.